So, boy, I almost don't even know where to start. Oh, before I get rid of this. Teenagers Thursday is St. Patty's Day baked potato bar. I'll have a shot of baked potato, please. I don't know. I wonder what happy hour means. 2 potatoes for the price of one. Sit that there for now. Boy, get my brain straight. My problem is as Jason pointed out at practice the other night, I like studying, particularly the Bible. The problem is I get so much stuff crammed into this pea brain. Oh, and it brings back, I've studied Daniel a ton of times, but it's funny when you have a certain focus and you're going through it, the things that you had forgotten come back to the surface again, about Daniel in this case. Way too many cul-de-sacs to go down. But before we look at his book, if you will, I wanted to consider a few things. First, I think I mentioned once before, maybe more times than that, when I did my dissertation, it was on establishing the historicity of Abraham. And you wouldn't think, oh, how hard can that be, you know? But the reason that we picked it is the majority of the Jews do not believe and are taught that Abraham was not a historical figure, that Abraham is fictional. And I mean, they seriously. I was over at Hebrew University a number of years ago now. And I mean, it's everywhere. Abraham is fiction, and he's in the Bible to teach us different things. And you know, if you follow the Jewish traditions, the rabbis, if you will, they would take a piece of scripture and just make this whole big thing out of it. And so they take Abraham and they just blow Abraham up like a morality story. And if you don't believe that Abraham was real, what else don't you believe? You don't believe the Exodus was real. You don't believe, and in fact, the Jews don't believe anything in the Bible is now they'll believe things in the Bible the way they're taught, but they don't believe anything in the Bible is factual until you get to Solomon, just after the time of David. Now they're starting to change. 2005 or so, I think I read an article, it was dated 2005 or so, that they're now starting to accept that David was real.
They have actually found some artifacts of his.
Oh yeah, the David Steele and some other stuff. Yes. Oh, maybe he was real. But yeah, and this is modern day, 2,000 years after Christ. It's just bizarre.
Okay, so quick question.
Yeah.
My own cul-de-sac here.
Yeah.
3 religions trace their faith back to Abraham.
That is correct.
Christianity, Judaism.
The 3 major world religions. Correct.
Islam.
Yeah.
Does Islam consider him historical or fictional?
Yes. Only Israel thinks that he's only the Jew. And the problem you have, if you take Abraham out of the picture as a real person, who else are you taking out of the picture?
Isaac.
Christ.
Jacob and the whole line.
Jesus is a descendant of Abraham, right? You're taking out this whole, your faith just falls, it has no foundation. It can be anything you want. If you're going to make Abraham allegorical, you can make the whole Bible allegorical, which in some Catholic traditions, they do that a lot. They love allegorical interpretations of the Bible rather than literal.
Baptists have tried to do that.
So here's what I told you we were going to have an interview.
Sorry.
No. Here's what the Muslims believe the first part of the Bible, right up to where the promise goes. And when the promise goes to Isaac, who was the promise supposed to go to? Ishmael. And that's where the Muslim faith goes this way, and we continue down the line of Isaac, the patriarchal narratives, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. But the Muslims are with us until that point, and then they follow Ishmael, and they say you stole his promise. Yeah. So yeah, crazy. Well, so just for fun, I think I did this yesterday. Maybe it was the day before. I don't know. I do all these crazy things. I went on Wikipedia. And well, no, Wikipedia. I know the internet, blah blah, and I didn't print it out this time. But what I'm usually looking for in a Wikipedia article, or did I print it out? I don't think so. No, their sources sought or their references cited thing. That's what I'm usually looking for. And there's some things out there, but this is freely supported by a whole bunch of their scripture references. And basically, I would just read the first part of this. Daniel, and then they have all the Hebrew words spelling it and so on, what it means and so on, is the main character of the book of Daniel. According to the Hebrew Bible, Daniel was a noble Jewish youth of Jerusalem taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. Did I spell that right? Golly, I did. I think I spelled it right. I get to go home early today. Oh, there's some words in there. Artaxerxes and Belteshazzar and so on and so on. Yeah, Tiglath-Pileser. Anyway, so here we go. Here we go. His successors, the Persian conqueror Cyrus and so on. We'll talk a little about that. Then it says, while some conservative scholars, hold that Daniel existed and his book was written in the 6th century BC, most scholars, most, sounds like a Trump, it's going to be the greatest. How do you know? They went around and polled all the scholars. Anyway, get off my... most scholars agree that Daniel is not a historical figure and that much of the book is a cryptic allusion to the reign of the 2nd century BC Hellenistic king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who we're also going to talk about today. And who was Antiochus IV Epiphanes?
Bad dude.
Bad dude. Pig's blood in the temple on the altar. 6 cities claim the tomb of Daniel, and then it just goes on and on and on. And we're not going to go through all that. Now, the Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Let's go over to a good Jewish site. And this is one of their rabbis. And we have here, this is Yehuda Sherpin has written the article. I don't know if that's the rabbi or not. But this is a letter to the person's rabbi, just like I'd write a letter to Bill, although I'd never write this one to him. Dear Rabbi, I was reading the book of Daniel, which is filled with extraordinary and apocalyptic visions. I was amazed to learn that it is not included in the section of the Bible known as the prophets. Now he's talking about the Hebrew Bible, not in the prophets. And that the Talmud does not even consider Daniel to have even been a prophet. What am I missing? Now here's Jewish, this is going to give you a headache. And I only printed out the first page. This goes on for like 5 pages, which most of the rabbis do anyway. So the issue you've raised is certainly puzzling, but before answering it, we first have to ascertain whether Daniel himself was in fact a prophet. On the one hand, the Talmud does explicitly state that Daniel was not a prophet. On the other hand, when the Talmud states that only 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses prophesied to Israel, the sages disagree as to whether Daniel was included in that list of 48 or not. What is even strange, so they argue over everything. What is even stranger is that the remark in the Talmud that Daniel was not a prophet is made in connection with an incident in which Daniel seems to have seen a vision, which you'll be very familiar with, when the 3 official prophets who were with him did not see that vision. So they were right, Daniel. So here's the vision. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. But the men who were with me did not see the vision. But a great quaking fell upon them, and they fled into hiding. Who were these men? Said Rabbi Yirmiyama. And some say it was Rabbi, oh, I see. Some said, and some say it was Rabbi, they were the prophets. Shaggy, oh, I see what he's doing. So this is how they argue. He's stating that two other rabbis have the same opinion, but they don't agree on who the three were that left the room. So one rabbi says they were the prophets Shagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. They were superior to Daniel, and he was superior to them. This is the Jewish. How do they get anywhere? They were superior to Daniel in that they were prophets and he was not. He was superior to them in that he saw a vision and they did not. We must therefore conclude that what distinguishes someone as a prophet is not whether he or she has visions, but something deeper and more fundamental. And then he goes on and on. I didn't even bother printing the rest of it. My head hurt by the time I got to the end.
I would love to hear them argue for a married bachelor.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about Daniel for just a second. Around 601 BC, I believe. Some of this is just coming off the empty head here, but around 601 BC, Nebuchadnezzar comes down out of Babylon, and you have the sort of the first siege or attack on Jerusalem, and he hauls off a bunch of young people. The Babylonians were smart in a way. They didn't want stupid people. So if they were running our border, they would, can you imagine? Are you smart or stupid? Are you old? They wanted young, not old. They wanted smart, not stupid. What kind of skill do you have? Sort of give them a third degree at the border, and then, no, you're not. Oh, yeah, you will take. That's right. So they come down, they're looking for, and they had an image, you'll recall, a healthy man. We call them almost athletic looking. They were in the king's court and in their military, they wanted healthy men, certain diets, all kinds of stuff. So they were looking for youth when they came into Jerusalem that fit, or into the Judah. They wanted people that would fit that way. And son of a gun, they found four. Or they found lots more. But the four we're familiar with were who? Daniel. And his three buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they what they liked about the four of them is not only were they healthy, they were very intelligent, very knowledgeable. And they haul them back. There's lots of, we don't have time to go through the fiery furnace, Daniel in the lion's den, and so on. But they take them back, and if you remember the story, because they were going to be in the king's court for 2 years, they were in training before they were even allowed in the king's presence. And they had to eat this diet that the Babylonians eat. And if you remember, Daniel said politely, up yours. And we have a diet and we're sticking to it. We have a God. Now the Babylonians were fine with the gods part. You can have whatever God you like. But if you're going to go see the king, you have to follow this program. No, we're not following the program. And it turned out they were healthier. The four of them were healthier than anybody in the program by the time it got done because they stuck to the Jewish diet and not eating all that wild game and other things that they had in Babylon. So Daniel and his three friends get into the king's court, and very intelligent, and their Babylonians would have called them magi. And what does magi actually mean? We talk about the kings, the three magi, and all that. What does it actually mean?
Well, magi is part of the word magic.
Yeah. Magic, that's part of it. Yeah. Soothsayers. knowledge and wisdom not common to man, I guess is another way to put it. Astronomy, astrology, all these that all got rolled into something called magi, and that's the role they take in the king's court. What was Daniel's role inside that? What was his position in the? And he had a bunch of magi. I mean, a large group of them. What was Daniel's role?
He was supervisor.
He was the chief magi, yeah, chief magician, chief whatever you want to call it. Why is that important to us today? He seems to know. Anybody else? He's got the hidden knowledge over there. That's what. Why is it important for us to know that today? What is Daniel? Scholars today, what do they credit Daniel with? Daniel, okay, 587, he went about 600 BC. 587 was the fall of Jerusalem, the end of the first temple period, and so on. And off they go. 516 or so, I think it is. Nebuchadnezzar's, not him, but the idiot that took his throne after him, is overthrown with a handwriting on the wall, and Darius comes in, sets up the Persian kingdom, and Daniel continues to serve even in the Persian kingdom for quite a while. I think they believe he died around 503, 504, dates of. So for who? So at 587, when they collapsed Jerusalem, he was already up in Babylon for 15 years or so. Now he's going to go another 70 or so. So he was in charge of this Magi group for a long time. Still nothing. Huh? I think I even mentioned this to you at Christmas, but maybe not. Oh, no, I guess this. Anyway.
He was the guy that was reading Jeremiah's prophecy. And Jeremiah had prophesied that Jerusalem would be laid waste for 70 years.
Yeah, but that's not where I'm going. So that's not important to us today. That's important to know.
Okay.
Not important to us today. How did the three wise men from the east, 700 years later, know to be looking in the sky and heading, when they saw the star, follow it?
Daniel.
That's right. Because he would have taught them all of those prophecies during his lifetime. And that's how they knew. Because they wouldn't have had a Bible, first of all, or any of that otherwise. But no, they had the Hebrew scrolls. Daniel taught them for 70 years. Here's what, now if you're going to get into, I'm sure they studied other things, mysticism and all this stuff, but you're also going to be fascinated. And if you don't think you're fascinated now, you wait till we start reading it. You're going to be fascinated with Daniel's prophecies. And who was the prophet that was in existence at the time of Daniel? Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was the one who forecasted that Jerusalem would fall. And what did God tell Jeremiah to tell the citizens of Jerusalem when that time came? Do you remember that? You're going to fall. Surrender, and you'll just be taken. Because siege warfare, if they surrounded the city and were preparing to lay siege warfare and you waved a white flag, they would just take you prisoner and off you go. But if you resisted, no stone was left unturned. And I mean brutally murdered everybody. And God told him that in advance. I'm going to send this guy down here. I'm going to give him the city. You surrender to him, you'll be fine. You don't, you're not. And Daniel and his three wise guys, they surrendered. And off they went. And Jeremiah so he would have been very familiar with Jeremiah in his day and his prophecies and in all of the things prior to that, and would have taught all of that to these magi, and they would have handed it down to theirs and down to theirs and so on, all this secret knowledge, so to speak. So we credit Daniel with teaching them about this so that the prophecy could be fulfilled, that the wise men from the east would come at his time of his birth and so on. Okay. I think that's all the cul-de-sac I wanted to run down this morning. In Ezekiel, we saw God's plan for the promised land and his calling back of his people, the rebuilding of Jerusalem in a different way, the realignment of geographies, all kinds of things. And that all starts at the end of the millennial reign. What we're going to study in Daniel, Zechariah, and I got some others here. Anyway, what we're going to start studying now is what happens during the period leading up to the tribulation period. Called the tribulation period, leading up to millennial reign. And you remember we started, this was, I thought about that, if this was a series on Netflix or something, the opening scene of the series would be dead bodies everywhere. A sea of dead bodies, no matter where you look, because that's what it'll be. And then how God restores all of that into the most beautiful place on the earth. The Israelis are restored to, the most well thought of race on the face of the earth, and so on. It's quite a contrast during the millennial reign. Well, so now we're going to go back to the future. We had all those bodies laying there, how they get there. And now we're going to look at the tribulation period, which is a 7-year period. And I'll give away the ending right away. That's your last week. We'll talk about all these weeks. And Bill will be familiar with this term if you guys haven't heard it. Today we live in what's referred to as the age of grace. If you're a dispensationalist, age of grace. What we're going to look at is Daniel's prophecy of 69 weeks leading up to the beginning of the age of grace. And then 1 week over here at the end of the age of grace. The great unknown for all of us is how long is this? Is it 2,000 years, 10,000 years? Nobody knows. But we do know how when this will end and that will start, and we know when this ends and that starts. Our job in between, Christ said, is to watch, always be alert, and to work. And we need to, I've said this, I'll say it 100 times in class. We need to keep our focus on the gospel, on getting it out to people, on finding people in need of it, helping people grow once they accept it. That's our generation, the next generation, every generation leading up to right here. That's going to be our job. Getting people into the kingdom of God and then caring for them, helping build them up, and so on and so on. Period. And that actually, if we could win the world to Christ, all this junk you see in the news every day would go away in a heartbeat. Because it will beginning in millennial reign. We know that for sure. So we're studying the end times. We need to know it. But our job day to day is our job day to day. And when it's time for these things to happen, they will happen. And then we'll go, oh, that's what this is. Okay, so we're going to start. I've got too many things here. Let me flip something over real quick. Yeah, I got scripture to read. I want to pull it out of here. Come on, let go of my. Okay. So we're going to read chapter 7 of Daniel. And fundamentally, 7, 8, and 9 is what we're the most interested in, although 9, not quite so much. We'll hop around a little bit. There's a lot in Daniel, a ton of stuff in Daniel. But our focus today is on this vision and his understanding of end time things, if you will. So we're in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel's dream of 4 beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. Now, let me stop right there. So we had Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king that brought Daniel to Babylon. What about this Belshazzar guy? Anybody know anything about him?
Grandson.
Took over after Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah. Did you know they're related to the Assyrian, was it Artaxerxes? Might have been. Or was it? I should have looked up my Assyrian history. Is not as good as it ought to be. You had the Assyrian Empire. And it got so big that the guy running it, sorry, I've forgotten his name, should know it, but the guy running it sent his cousin, I think it was, Yeah, I think it was a relative anyway, down to run the Babylonian part of the Assyrian Empire, so that they could spread out across, Iran, Persia, and keep on going that way, and further south into what we call the Middle East. That guy eventually decides, I don't need you. And they go up and take care of the dude. And it's the end of the Assyrian Empire and the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. And it's Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is running the Babylonian. These empires, if you notice at the museum, these empires don't last long. 100, 125 years max for most of them, some of them less than that. The Roman Empire managed to, probably been the first. The rest, the Greek Empire, which we're going to talk about, was a flash in the pan compared to time. In any case, there's always been a bunch of intrigue and backstabbing and all of these kinds of things. And Nebuchadnezzar finally dies, and now we get Belshazzar. Am I right there? Yeah, Belshazzar. And he's the dude that decides, I don't feel like fighting anymore. So anybody remember what he does to strengthen, quote unquote, the Babylonian kingdom? He hires mercenaries, the Medes. And basically the fighting and their military is taken over by the Medes. The kingdom is so successful, we'll just hire our army. We don't need to put one up ourselves. They had one, but the Medes were primarily the dudes. And the Medes aren't stupid either. The Medes, because they're in all the military places, go, you know what? We could take this place. And they hook up with the Persians, and they come down and take Babylon. It's not even a siege. Not one arrow is fired. Nobody's killed, and the whole empire falls into the hands of what they call the Medo-Persians, during one night's wild orgy party. And that's what, if you've heard the handwriting on the wall, that was the night, the handwriting on the wall. And who interprets the handwriting on the wall? Daniel. Yeah. Quite the dude. Yeah, so that brings us around to where we are now. And it says the first year. So Belshazzar has just become king. The handwriting on the wall, I think, is chapter 9 or something later on. So Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind. As he was lying in bed, he wrote down the substance of his dream. I'm trying to picture this. Now today, and I've done it myself sometimes, you keep a notepad or something at your nightstand, and in the middle of the night it hits you, you wake up, you write that down. What's he do? Run over to the closet and grab a big sheet of parchment paper or sheepskin or something and come unroll. I don't. This is Wes's twisted mind, I got to tell you. Anyway, he wrote down the substance of his dream, and fortunately, we're glad that he did, because we have it now in his book. And Daniel said, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven, churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. Nice. After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. Now, before we go further, we're going to put another, I waited on this one on purpose. We're going to put another one up here. What does beast mean? What? Come on. What is, not mean, but what's it a symbol of here in prophecy? Good grief. What's doing there? Come on, one more time. What is beast?
Anytime you think of beast, you think of
Yeah, but what is it symbolizing here? Yeah, an empire, a kingdom, a ruling authority. Yeah, and not just a ruling authority. We could say a mountain would be the same thing. Evil. They're brutal. Beasts are evil, brutal, harmful, whatever you want. But they're some sort of kingdom. We're going to read about the Antichrist as a beast, as an example, and so on when we get over there. But yeah, that's another one that we're seeing. I wanted you to spot that today while we're going through this. So, fourth beast. Oh, and after that, my vision, I looked, therefore, it was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the other former beasts, and it had 10 horns. Oh, I forgot to put, no, I did put horns up there. Good, okay. And it had 10 horns. 10 horns. Verse 8. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn. Well, we got horns everywhere. This is the trumpet section of the heavenly, no, probably not. A little horn, which came up among them. And 3 of the first 4 were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Certain page. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were open. And then I continued to watch because the boastful words the horn was saying, I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming in the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and people of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Hui. Now, fortunately, we have an interpretation of what we just read. So let's continue for a minute. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, no kidding, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. A little too much vinegar in a salad that night. I approached one of these standing there and asked him the meaning of all this. And so he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. But the holy people of the Most High will receive that kingdom and possess it forever. Then I wanted to know the meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying, with its iron teeth and bronze claws. The beast that crushed and devoured his victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up before the 3 of them fell. The horn before which the 3 of them fell. The horn that looked more imposing than the others and that had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High, and the time came when they possessed the kingdom. Wow. He gave me this explanation. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on the earth. It will be different from all the other previous kingdoms, all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. Excuse me. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will rise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against, you got a scorecard now, keep track of all this. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for time, times, and a half time. But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away, and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. Can you imagine? There is so much in here. Just for a moment, a worthwhile cul-de-sac. We just read time, times, and a half time, which I have up here. And so that's a year. Times is two of those, so it's 2 years, and that's a half time. You're going to end up, you do the prophetic man. Oh, that's beautiful, Wes. That's just. If you do the math, then we've got 1 year, 2 years, and we have a half, which gives us 3.5 years. And then we'll come across other ways to express that, but the 3.5 year period. So you've got a 7-year tribulation period. This is half. It's either the front or the back. We'll figure that out as we go. But you're going to get time, times, and a half time, and then we're going to see some other things that we'll also explain. We'll get into, bring your calculator next week. Man, I'll tell you, number of days and all this stuff. But let's hit some of the highlights here before our time runs out on us. So he was troubled in the matter. No kidding. So in Daniel's day, so what we have is we have 3 kingdoms and then a 4th, right? And in Daniel's day, what was the empire or the kingdom that was ruling at the time?
Assyrian or Babylon?
Babylonian. Very good, Aaron. Assyrian happened up here. But the reason we start with, why should I give you all the answers? What's the reason that we start with Babylonian in this case?
Because that's when Daniel got captive.
Well, that's true too, but there's a bigger reason than that.
Because they were the biggest at that.
The Assyrians took the top 10 tribes away who were anti-God almost, the idol worship and all that. Left the tribe of the nation of Judah, 2 tribes. They went into exile, and that was the end of Israel at the time when they went into Israel. And the you want to call it the first temple period ended. They destroyed the temple. Later, of course, they'd go back and rebuild it. That's when this history starts in terms of prophecy. So we had Babylonian Empire. Okay, then the Babylonians, we just said, fell to who?
Medo-Persian.
Yeah. And today, if we were to describe the Persian Empire, what would we be talking about? Who's Persia?
Well, we had kids at school who were Afghan, different languages, but some of them spoke Persian.
Which is Farsi, I believe. Is that correct? I think.
Well, no, not even Farsi, because they didn't.
No, but I mean, Persian language is Farsi, I think, isn't it?
Well, this particular family didn't speak Farsi.
Oh, okay.
That was a different group that
Yeah.
spoke Farsi. So, there's a lot of,
Talk about scoreboard.
it's
So,
all
yeah.
that Middle to Far Eastern.
That's correct. The biggest piece is Iran.
Yeah.
And then you end up with coming over, Iraq is in there, stands all over the place. And what's important here, of course, is something called, my handwriting is awful, the Persian Gulf. So if you look at, it's called the Persian Gulf. All that country around that area, that Persia. So today, when we talk about Iran, the Shah of Iran, well, not the Shah of Iran, the Khomeini, whatever he's called over there, Ayatollah. They're Persian. And their heritage goes back when ISIS was going in and wrecking things. They were Persian, Babylonian statues and things that go back thousands of years were being destroyed and all of that stuff. And so it's hard for us as Americans who are now getting ready to celebrate 250 years to equate with some. Not only have they been in that same land, their heritage goes back thousands of years. So for you to walk over there as an American and say, now, here's what we want you to do. Yeah, Anyhow, so that was the Second Empire. All right, then it fell to who?
Alex?
Alex? Yeah.
Alex.
It fell to Alex. Yeah, Alexander the Greek brought in the Greek Empire, and also referred to as the Hellenistic period. And the Hellenistic influence remained with the Jews till past the time of Christ. Greek became their primary language, and so on and so on. But Alex himself didn't fare well. He came screaming across, from the Mediterranean all the way across what we'd refer to as the Middle East. I think he even got down into Egypt, if I remember right. I think he got Egypt too. And but the problem was, in those days, if you were in the army, you walked. And after about, I don't think it was quite a year, maybe it was a year, I don't know, a long period of time, these dudes are tired of fighting. We want to go home. We got crops to plant. We got, and there was some, and so he gets to cross into India, where he's going next. He was going to take India next, and everybody goes, eh. And they turned around and came back. And where was Alexander when he died? He was in Babylon, having a big party, and they think he probably died of alcohol poisoning. Although there is another theory that he was poisoned on purpose because everybody was sick of the guy. But either way, he died after a big party in Babylon. And when he died, what happened to his kingdom?
Split between his 4 generals.
That's right. One of them got Egypt and that area. And who's our guy? Yeah. What general got our area? So, crap. Good thing I wrote it down. Ptolemy got Egypt. I think that's correct. Yeah. I didn't write him down. Oh, Seleucid. Is that coming out of my head? But it could be wrong. In any case, what Alexander had in his will was he wanted his power spread against 4 generals, and his entire empire was assigned. This guy got all of Egypt, and one of them got some of the Holy Land. It's a weird arrangement, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think it's the Seleucids. I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry?
Pergamon, Asia Minor, Seleucid in the east.
Yeah. As I say, it was a weird allocation. But these 4, so this kingdom, and I think, did we read where it actually tells you that happens?
Yes.
Yeah, it fell into 4 places. And then eventually what will happen is the Romans will be next. That's our last, the Roman Empire. Number 4, okay? And they'll come down, and the Romans had a way of breaking their kingdom up and putting locals in charge. Who was the local they put in charge of what we would call Israel, Judea, that area?
Herod.
Pardon me? Herod.
One of the earlier.
Yeah, now the original, I think this is Herod the Great, I believe. And then there's another Herod after him. Oh, the study of the Herods will drive you crazy. But Herod the Great, we'll just put TG. Herod the Great's father was connected to the Roman government. And that's how they ended up getting that piece. Now, since we're not going to get much further today, we're going to go another cul-de-sac for a second. Let's see, this is Israel, so to speak. Down over in here, so we're over in Jordan now. And now we're over in Petra. What would Herod have to do with Petra?
Conquer it.
I know I covered this when we first started a year and a half ago, but that's all right. I'm sorry?
Conquer it.
No?
So Petra's where they have those,
It's
I
the
don't know
rose
if
red
it's a
city with
temple or
all
whatever, but inside
Yeah, the city of Petra's there. That's correct. You're getting there. So this end of the Holy Land, we'll just come down this way. And, up in here would be this, and then you got the Dead Sea and so on. This end is the home of the Edomites. And you'll remember that was Esau and his illicit marriages and whatnot, and his descendants lived down here. And Herod's family was a descendant of the Edomites. The Idumeans, Idumeans, I believe. The Idumeans, who were they? They lived down there too. They built Petra. And they were the ones I told you about who had figured out their camels can survive in the desert. Thieves can't. And they figured out how to go from one oasis to another till they could eventually come across the whole desert and shorten the trade route by months by hitting these oases. And when they would get to the other side of it, because there's desert right over here, when they get to the other side of that, they arrive at this source of water and the red rock and all that. And they become so successful, they built the city of Petra. And I believe, Josephus, I think, writes about, there's a thought that Herod was either an Idumean or a crossbreed. One of the parents was an Edomite, one was an Idumean or something like that. Well,
that was Nabatean.
oh, the Nabateans, that's right. Oh, I forgot about those guys. Sorry. Where am I getting the Idumeans from?
Well, the father was Idumean.
Okay. I knew I had an Idumean in there somewhere. Pardon me?
Antipater.
Oh, yeah. So what happens eventually, the Jews come down, take this and say, you're getting circumcised or you're not going to live in this country. So Herod and his guys got circumcised, and that's why Herod would say that he was a Jew, because he had been circumcised. And then what happens is the dad, who's connected to Rome, once that happens, moves the family up north of Jerusalem. And they'll stay up there. Herod will never come back to this area, but that's where he was raised, if you will, down there. Probably more than you want to know about Herod. But yeah, the Fourth Empire is the Roman Empire. When we get into Revelation, and we'll start with this next week, but when we get into Revelation, we read about the beast having a wound to its head, like it dies, and then it comes back to life. Oh, that's Elvis is going to be the Antichrist, all this crap. And what it's referring to is the Roman Empire appears to be dead, but is revived by the Antichrist. At least that's one theory. We'll talk about lots of theories, but we'll start with that one. So since everybody's abandoning me, let's have a closing word of prayer. And next week we'll pick up with that.